I have a husband who lives a double life, and now I want to expose him. Me and Daniel have been married for 8 years. We met at a mutual friend's engagement party and instantly hit it off. He was charming, intelligent, and magnetic in the way that everyone found him hard to be around. We became inseparable, and he proposed within a year. I was convinced that he was the love of my life. We had a whirlwind romance, which still continues to date. The first few years of my marriage to Daniel were nothing short of amazing. He was an attentive, thoughtful husband, and seemed genuinely invested in building a future together with me. We moved into a beautiful home in the suburbs where we welcomed our first child, followed by our second child 2 years later. To everyone around us, we were the perfect couple with the perfect family. As the years passed, however, small fissures began to emerge in what appeared to be a perfect relationship. Work began to consume more of Daniel's time, and he started to become more and more withdrawn. He was always coming home late, claiming he had been held up by meetings or business dinners. I wanted to believe him, to trust the man I had built my life with. But the signs were there, and they were getting harder to ignore. Changes in his behavior came to my noticing. He never left his phone unattended, thus became secretive with it. When queried about the long shifts and late night, he tended to offer vague and dismissive replies. "It's just been really busy," he would respond while avoiding looking me directly in the eyes. You know how it is. I wanted to have faith in him, to have faith in the fact that our marriage was as strong as it had always been. However, there were signs that were too glaring to ignore that were making me uneasy. There was too much time for him to wall himself away in the office for too long. The previously mentioned business trips were also becoming too frequent. He was always going out of town on them. Things started changing one day when he came back home later than he usually did. My husband came home with his shirt half out, his tie in disarray, and his face looking rather drained. I was in the living room waiting for him. Once he walked through the door, he leaned over to kiss me on my cheek. He messily whispered that he'd had a late meeting before making his way upstairs. I couldn't help but worry about what was going on with him. With the passage of time, I began wondering what could have possibly gone wrong. I kept replaying those moments in my mind over and over again, searching for hints that could help me figure out the mess. The reality is, I kept overriding all those boring little pieces of information, but when stacked together they were quite alarming. Such information, if paid good attention to, could turn out to be quite revealing. I want, and in fact, need to get the answers. If you're not following our channel, you might never see it again. But if you're subscribed, congratulations. You will always have access to check the most interesting stories you want to listen to or watch at any time. The following morning, as Daniel readied himself for work, I commenced my investigation. My first step was going through his study, which has always been a restricted area for everyone else. I began going through his desk drawers. Seeing receipts, business cards, and other documents was stirring inside me a sense of guilt, but I suppressed it. I needed to understand the whole situation. Initially, I came across nothing skirting the boundaries of the ordinary: bills, work papers, and other dull items. Unfortunately, I did not expect more from the drawer. Nevertheless, I scanned through and stumbled across a small leather-bound item at the bottom of the drawer. To my relief, it was not his regular planner or notebook. Rather, it was more personal and older. My hand started to shake as it flipped through the pages. The journal included accounts and notes involving meetings and events which seemed to be personal in nature. However, the kind of meetings which were written down were completely different from what he spoke of to me. These were not professional meetings. They were romantic rendezvous that he went to with someone. The entries brought to account intimate dinners, weekend escapades, and various tender moments which he shared with someone designated as Liam. I felt my stomach churn as I read through the entries. Within that journal was a life he had been living unbeknownst to me, a life in which there was someone else. I was devastated. There was a devilish fury fighting to seep out inside me as I collected pieces of that journal. This was not just an affair. Daniel was not only a cheater but was my partner in a sincere relationship situated alongside our life. But who was Liam? And how long had this been going on? Firstly, I required more insight before bringing the issue to Daniel because there lies the risk of him turning the situation in any way possible, turning the truth around. I had to appreciate the possibility of slowly having my reality encroach upon me. The excuse I drew from my very own diary was insidious. What I truly required were facts that could not be twisted to suit any means or reason. Facts which were cold and hard. Over the next couple of days, I took a deep dive. I looked through Daniel's phone log. I searched through his emails and even his work calendar. It was painful, intrusive, and deeply disquieting. But I had my reasons. I had to understand the full scope of his betrayal. What I found out sent a chill down the back of my neck. He was very active, not just with messages, but also calls with Liam. He even did so when he claimed to be at work, or very late at night. They spoke in code, hinting at meetings and business travel that was obviously more than just work. There were photos too, photos of them together, head over heels in love, smiling and holding hands. He claimed he was visiting places for work, places I had never been to tag along. Then I found it, a lease agreement for an apartment downtown. The tenant names were Daniel and Liam. This was the proof I needed. He wasn't just having an affair. He was living a double life. Feeling a sudden upsurge of emotions, fueled with anger, sadness, and betrayal, gave me a grim sense of determination to believe every word he uttered. Daniel had been living a lie, and in order to sustain that facade, he had me and my children live in that lie with him. It turns out, he had built an entire world outside his marriage without the intent of me ever finding out. But now I knew that wasn't true, and there was no chance in hell that I was going to allow for that lie to slide. I knew what my next steps were. However, I was aware that if I ended up confronting him too soon, there was a higher chance of him denying everything, attempting to twist the situation in his favor or worst case, gaslight me into questioning my psyche. I had to come up with a plan that made him face the truth, devoid of illusionary exits to escape from. Beginners had the tendency to only rely on theory instead of action, but in this case, collecting every single shred of evidence that I could find would pay off in the end. From copying the lease agreement and phone records to photos and journal entries, I was meticulous about documenting everything to create something that would expose the full extent of his betrayal. In addition to this, I made contact with a divorce lawyer to get an understanding of my legal rights, knowing full well that if this was destined to end, it would be on my terms. All the while, I continued pretending to be the unsuspecting wife. I pretended to be glad whenever he walked through the door, created conversation around his day, and made sure that the routine continued without a hitch. It hurt so much to maintain the facade when I was mad, deep down. But I understood that I had to do this. To manage his suspicion, I had to ensure he didn't think that I was aware of anything. Then, Liam came along. Who was he in all of this? Was he also another passive victim of Daniel's web of deception just like me? Or was he part of this life Daniel was leading? I need to figure it out. I need to know exactly what Daniel has done on my blind side. I was able to find Liam's information through Daniel's phone. I was furious and scared at the same time as I called him. As much as I wanted to prepare myself for the conversation, the only reasonable thing I felt that I needed to do was to listen to his side of the story. Upon picking up, Liam sounded very businesslike until I introduced myself. I'm Daniel's wife. My name is Anna. There was an awkward silence before he sharply drew in a breath. Wife, he repeated, although it came out so quietly that it was almost a whisper. Wife, what do you mean, wife? My heart skipped a beat. Does he not know about me? Is it possible Daniel did lie to him too? Yes, I said, still trembling. I'm his wife. It's been 8 years. We have 2 kids together. At first there was dead silence on the other end of the line, but then for Liam brought some sort of noise. I had no idea. He told me he was divorced. He said he was raising his kids alone. Anger, sorrow, and a nauseating sense of betrayal rushed through me all at once. Not only Daniel had spun a web of told faux reality, full of betrayals and manipulation directed towards me, but also around Liam. A narrative where he is the devoted father, the man who was wronged in a past relationship. That's how he got over it. Need to meet you, Liam said abruptly. We should have a conversation. I decided to meet Liam at the downtown cafe, although details remained completely hazy. In his conversation, was I hearing the very truth? Or was he also a pawn in Daniel's lies? All sorts of unrelenting, furious thoughts rushed through my mind. After months of choking underneath the thick mist of betrayal, I was finally perceived towards Liam, who had undoubtedly been concealed from myself for so long. When arriving at the cafe, I noticed Liam was already seated with his face puckered with pain and confusion. He sat at the corner table, utterly lost in his thoughts until the moment we exchanged glances. And at that moment, we knew that we didn't need to say much more. We had both been fooled by the same liar and had paid the cost in one form or the other. With no delay, Daniel uttered, I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know. The very moment I had taken my seat, skepticism clouded my mind, and I chose to examine him closer, but all I could find is an equal amount of hurt and confusion that I was feeling. Quietly, I responded, tell me everything I want to know. His body language went through a shift as he took a deep breath, preparing himself to speak. So, I met Daniel 2 years ago, he starts. He claimed to be divorced and said that his ex-wife left him along with the kids. He explained that he was doing his best to raise them, but it was extremely difficult. Thus, he hoped to start anew with someone who actually cared for him. A frigid knot formed within my stomach. 2 years. For years, I had been an upright citizen subject of the United States, while this man had been living a double life, lying to my face every single day. Following, I questioned, "And you trusted him? Is that right?" Liam appeared embarrassed as he looked down. I really did. He was so persuasive. He introduced me to his friends, showed me the apartment, and made me feel like we were building a future together, which clearly was not the case. I had no reason to mistrust him. He was that good, I said, my voice sounding devoid. He wasn't the best at making people believe what he wanted them to believe for no reason. Liam's gaze went to me as he displayed shame in his eyes. "I'm so sorry, Anna. I never intended to hurt you or your kids. You are the last person I think about." In an attempt to take in everything that Daniel had done, we both got lost in our thoughts. The truth was undeniable. He had constructed 2 different worlds and ensnared us both in false realities that separated us. He had betrayed not only me but the man who he had said he loved. Liam's voice cut through my thoughts when he asked, "What is the next course of action?" "Exposing him is exactly what we'll do," I said in a determined tone. "He must live with the consequences of his lies. This is no way to continue treating people." "Sure, I want to help," Liam responded as he nodded. "I am also aware that he lied to me. I want to make sure that he is not able to damage anyone's life ever again." With the details provided by Liam and the evidence that I had gathered, I felt prepared to list my accusations against Daniel. But this was not going to be done behind closed doors, and sighed in relief that he would not be able to lie his way out of it. It was now everyone's turn to see how he had been playing them all, manipulating the world around him. I decided to host a get-together at our place and asked a few close friends and family to join. To him, this was meant to be a friendly gathering, a meet-up with some of the family and friends. He would further regret this, as it would lead to the combination of all of his lies. The day arrived, and he was clearly in his happy place. He was charming guests while laughing and hugging them and showcasing himself as a devoted husband and father. The sight of him making me angry was very soothing, but seeing him flaunt the information he had made up rattled me to my core. All I had to do was bide more time. As people settled down, I got up to get everyone's attention. Daniel observed me with a raised eyebrow. "I want to tell you something important," I said, making sure my voice wavers to the anger side. "It's something concerning Daniel and the life he lives." Low murmurs could be heard from every corner of the room. Daniel's face seemed to lose all its color. "What are you talking about, Anna?" he asked, clearly distressed. My eyes were fixed on his face. "I mean your double life, Daniel. The apartment downtown, Liam." Not a single word was uttered after this, and I could sense the underlying discomforting feeling that was present. His eyes were opened wide. A combination of fear and shock was plastered all over his face. "I have no idea what you are saying," he said with a stutter. "It's ridiculous." "I have been to the apartment, seen the lease, and talked to Liam. I know everything," I exclaimed, making sure I do not lower my voice. Uncontrollable gasps could be heard from all corners of the room. I could sense the expression of betrayal on the faces of the people who once supported him. The world is a painful place, and I watched as his expression of lies was molded. The journals, messages, and the photos made him more of a prisoner than a free man. Daniel remained motionless, his face pale. He tried to talk, but no sound was produced. For once, he was speechless. He got caught red-handed, and there was no way to get out of it, no spinning it, no manipulation left to do. "Liam?" One of our friends spoke, bewildered. "You have another relationship? With a man?" Daniel's eyes began to look for his escape, but there was none for him. He had been caught, and the life he worked so hard to build around himself was shattering like glass. A single stone had broke all that he worked so hard for. He turned to me. "Anna, please, let me explain," he begged me with his eyes. But I interrupted him. "Explain?" I snapped, fury and anguish blending within my voice. "Explain how you're done me for years? Deceiving me, not just me, but everyone here? And how you're having a double life? They may seem repulsive, but there is no explanation that can justify what you've done." He took a step forward towards me, but I held my hand up. "Don't," I said resolutely. "It's over. I want you out of this house and out of our lives." He remained standing with a broken expression. Stuttering was something visible unto him, but sympathy wasn't the thing I wanted. He had made his choices, choices that had destroyed our marriage, and he had made his choices. I turned away from him, addressing our friends and family once more. "I have filed for divorce," I stated. "Daniel will move out straight away. I would like you all to understand the truth because you deserve to know who he was. He has been living a lie and now, that lie is over." With that, I got out of the room, my head full of tangled up thoughts, leaving Daniel to face the people he had lied to. I happened to develop a sense of relief. The truth was out, and it felt like I was no longer in the shadow of his blasphemy. The intensity of their confrontation is vividly terrible. That evening, Daniel moved out with no more than a suitcase. He made attempts to reach out to me, to apologize and beg for another opportunity. I did not listen. Everything that needed to be said had already been said. He had ruined the relationship beyond repair, and there was no going back. Few days later, Liam called me. He was heartbroken not only for himself, but for me and the children too. There was genuine concern for all of us. We were all victims of Daniel's lies and were led to believe in a world that never was. We met once again, this time to talk and to make sense of everything. "I expected better from you," Liam said with regret sprinkled in his tone. "Had I known the truth, I would never have gotten involved with him." "I know," I responded, my head feeling heavy and exhausted. We were all part of his web of lies. But this time, we were free and able to move on. "Do you think he will ever change?" he asked. "No, don't know, don't care. But that is irrelevant now. The focus has to be on self-healing and self-moving forward." And with that, we went our separate ways. With him being a victim like me, we were never friends. But there was mutual understanding that was profound. Both of us had been wronged, but we were no longer bound. It felt as if the subsequent weeks were a punishment. It could not have gotten worse, but it did. The divorce proceedings were crushing, beginning with legal battles surrounding custody and asset division. There were custody and the asset division legal battles to endure. Daniel argued his personal life was irrelevant to his rights as a father, but my lawyer was very clear that his lies and double life certainly explained a lot. Ultimately, the court's decision favored me. I was bestowed full custody of the children, while Daniel was given partial visitation rights. In his attempts to balance everything, he ended up losing what mattered the most. The community was in shock, struggling to comprehend the reality. Friends and acquaintances who knew us as a perfect couple were grappling with the revelation of Daniel's double life. Alongside those who chose to support me, some refrained from getting involved, confused about how to confront the reality. Despite all the overwhelming emotions, I prevailed. My life now rests on my rebuilt terms, after exposing him for the deceiver that he is. The kids had a hard time adjusting, but I made sure to support them every step of the way. It was important for me to emphasize that they were not to blame, that they were and always would be loved and cared for by me. Together, as a family, we went to therapy sessions to unravel the confusion and pain caused by Daniel's betrayal. In Daniel's case, life began to unravel. His reputation was invariably destroyed, which eventually turned the people that admired him into his adversaries. Subsequently, Daniel, for a time, moved in with Liam, but their bond was unable to bear the wear off. Eventually, the two separated, which meant that Daniel was solely responsible for the destruction he so painstakingly crafted. A few years passed, and the consequences of betrayal on Daniel started gradually fading. I, on the other hand, crafted a new and wholesome life for myself, as well as the children, where love and calmness prevailed. With the backing of friends, family, and community, I came to the realization that I was more resilient than I had previously thought. Most importantly, I started dating again, albeit with more caution. Initially, I was always on guard, anticipating deceit. Luckily, I was able to build trust over time, which subsequently allowed me to open up again. Eventually, I met someone understanding, supportive, and most importantly, honest. It was a complex and slow process. However, in the end, I was able to feel joy again. As for Daniel, we did not meet often. The traces of his double-lived life follows him every step of the way. He made his choices, and with each decision came a heavy price. He remains a father to our children, but he is no longer the sole man I used to know, nor am I the only woman he had set foot with. At the end of everything, I realized I have chosen myself, for my sanity rather than putting the burden of harming him with free will on myself. I was in a place filled with disbelief, too many possibilities and choices allowing me to be free of this mess, but I had to expose him, not out of vengeance, but out of a need that is rare to satisfy. Nonetheless, it started with the intent to build the lie he created, but it is not something I choose to live with ever again. Daniel borrowed interests of others to keep the picture beautiful, but his reality was harsh, and that too out of a single illusion. With the honesty, I pleasantly made my way out of his life, bringing me a new era filled with this newfound strength. Socially, context tells me that while I was married to a certain person, mundane activities were a scarring yet an intimidatingly illusionary and eye-catching reality. Now, in a world filled with possibilities, I spice quite greatly while standing out, having undergone betrayal. I crafted for myself an uproarious life filled with principles.